Right. Hey, folks. So today we're going to talk about something which the OGs of the channel should be very familiar with. Actually, this was the topic of my very first video on YouTube some 3 years ago now, in 2021. But for the newer members to the channel, I'm going to explain this concept by taking a trip down memory lane. Join me as I tell you a bit of a history and in illustrating today's lesson. Okay. So first of all, before we go on, do make sure you write a comment. So it's good for the algorithm. It boosts engagement, all that kind of stuff. And if you're not subscribed, subscribe to the channel. You'll get plenty more good free information like this every week. So come back in time with me to the late 90s. Now, this was roundabout when the internet was just coming alive. Yeah. And there was information about all sorts, predominantly through websites and forums. There was no social media back then. And there were starting to pop up some small powerlifting websites. One of the first that I happened to come across when I first started looking on the internet for ideas about training was one called deepsquatter.com. Good website, lots of information, lots of articles from all manner of people across the globe who were currently writing articles, or at the time were writing. Now, there were a lot of articles by one fella who you might know called Louis Simmons. We all know Louis now, may he rest in peace. He was a prolific writer back then, hugely prolific. I would say probably half the articles on Deep Squatter were from Louis. And if you took the time, you could learn all about Louis, his history, how he came upon Westside Barbell. Now, at the time, there was starting to gather a lot of interest around Westside Barbell and the Conjugate method. Now, in the beginning, Conjugate was not the well thought out practice system that it is now. You think Conjugate now, you think solid system, yeah, has its pros and cons like every system, but it's a well-established system with good parameters for success if you want to run it. Our own Alex Leonidas ran Conjugate for many years, and he gained a lot of strength doing that. So it's a very well-established system, but that wasn't the case 25, 30 years ago. 25, 30 years ago, it was still in the experimental stage, and it was probably more suited towards enhanced, equipped lifters. But at the time, we were seeing a lot of interest amongst the raw, unequipped ranks. So just regular Joes who were out to lift, maybe not even powerlifters, guys who were just looking to get better at lifting. So they came across the system, which promised a lot, but it needed to be adapted for raw, unequipped lifting. So anyway, I was on the forums in the early 2000s, late 90s. And I recall I was mostly doing my style of training. You're probably watching this alongside my other video series at the moment, which I'm going through, which is my first 20 pounds of muscle. And I was going through just basic linear periodization, just double progression, regular stuff. Now, I was logging my progress on the forums back then. And I specifically remember there was another lad. We were two of the younger guys on the forum back then. And he was this Polish lad, I remember. And he was a couple of years older than I was, and he was very strong. So whatever I was lifting, he was lifting 20 to 30 kilos above that. And we were both interested in powerlifting. So anyway, this guy, at the same time I started my log, just logging my regular linear progression, double progression methods, he started logging his journey in Westside. So it was interesting to watch his daily updates and see what he was doing. And he was rotating through all kinds of max effort exercises, lots of variety, lots and lots of accessories. It looked like a busy week, 4 sessions per week, as well as accessory exercises and accessory sessions where he would do extra work for the abs and the lower back. And this guy, bear in mind, was a raw powerlifter, just like I was. Now, it looked like he was doing great. It looked like he was making lots of progress. Every week, seemingly, he would hit a new PR on one lift or another. But he would only do the lift, say, once every 12 weeks or so. But every time he came around to a lift, he was making progress. So it all looked like things were going great. So at the end of the 6 months, I specifically remember him testing his maxes for the bench, squat, and deadlift. And he had regressed massively. He'd lost maybe 10, 15 kilos on each lift. And I had gained in that time. We weren't quite neck and neck, but I was getting closer. I was catching up to him. And I specifically recall he really couldn't understand what was going on. So he brought it up on the forums and we chatted about it. And I didn't really know much about it at the time. I was still very much a beginner. I knew what I knew. I had my high intensity, low volume kind of routine, and it was working, but I didn't know as much as I know now. To be honest, globally, we didn't know much about Westside. We didn't know how it would work with raw lifters. There just wasn't that much information out there. But anyway, over the course of the next week of discussion, the main thing that came out of it was he just wasn't practicing each lift for long enough. He was hitting a squat, bench, and deadlift, a regular variation, probably once every 12 weeks. Now, the comeback to that is he was making progress. Every time he hit a lift, he was progressing on it. He just might not hit it again for 12 weeks, but he was progressing on it. So surely you'd think he's progressing. And that led us to the discussion of what is actual real progress. Well, this kind of brings us fast forward to the lesson for today. And I was discussing this with a client of mine last week, which is what gave me the inspiration for this video. The thing that he was doing wrong was he wasn't really getting to what I refer to as the golden zone, where you have gone through all those initial sessions of just getting used to a new exercise, because we all have that. Like I started a new machine press a few weeks back. I've just joined a new gym recently, and there's one machine there that I really like for the chest. It's the Atlantis incline chest press. Now, I started on that with just 3 plates aside, and I rapidly improved. 3 plates, 3.5 the week after, 4 plates, 4.5, should be moving up to 5 pretty soon. Now, that's rapid progress, but I certainly haven't gained, what is that, 120 to 200. I've not gained 80 kilos worth of muscle over the last 4 weeks. That doesn't make any sense, right? What's happened? I've gotten more used to the exercise. Now, at a certain point, that rapid progress is going to level off. And I'm going to get to the point where I'm progressing on maybe 2.5 kilos a time, a couple of reps here, a couple of reps there. That's when I will see actual real progress, and I will see gains in muscle tissue. Now, taking it back in time to the example I was giving, at no point was that kid ever in that end zone, that golden zone. He wasn't actually stressing his muscles to the point where he was gaining tissue. He was never in that golden zone. So it's a very important lesson there for you guys. Quite a lot of people will cycle through exercises over and over to see that rapid progress. So they'll gain 5 kilos per week, 10 kilos per week, 15 kilos per week, over and over again. And as soon as they hit that point where progress slows to a halt, they will switch exercises or they'll switch routines. Now, I learned very early on, partly it was through my reading, but also partly it was actually this example, this Polish kid. I learned very early on that that zone where everything slows down, where reps go up by maybe 1 or 2 per week, maybe 5 pounds a month, that golden zone, that's where the gains are made, which is the opposite of what people think. People think the gains are made in that initial push upwards, like progress. And then all of a sudden progress seemingly stops and they think something's wrong. I've got to change my routine. No, that's when you start gaining. That golden zone, that's when you start to gain. You don't gain anything before that. You're just getting used to the lift. You're getting used to the routine, the new rep scheme, the new angle. If you're getting used to pauses or stretches, whatever you're doing, you're just getting used to the exercise. That's it. You're getting used to the new setup. Perhaps you did bench presses first before, now you're doing bench presses last or second. You're just getting used to the layout. It's not progress. So that is what I term the golden zone. That's where you've got to sit. That's where you've got to live. It's the extra 1 or 2 reps, the extra 5 pounds on the bar, which happens extremely slowly. That doesn't get faster, and it shouldn't do. Now, there's a couple of consequences of changing the routine whenever things get hard. Okay, the first consequence is you don't grow. That's the big thing. You don't grow. So if you're in a surplus, that surplus is not going to your muscles, it's going to your belly. You guys ever been on a bulk and you're like, oh, nothing's happening, I'm just getting fatter? Maybe that's it. Maybe you're not actually grinding week in, week out. Maybe whenever you get to the grinding point, you think, I've stalled. So you switch exercises and you justify it in your head. You might still be justifying it. You might be sitting there going, no, I stalled. So that's why I changed. The last time you change routines, maybe that's what you're thinking. Me personally, I change routines maybe once a year, once every 2 years, maybe every 18 months, because there's no point. I'm just trying to get better. I want to live in that golden zone. There's no point in just recycling exercises, recycling new routines. It's not progress. So the first consequence is you never actually deliver a stimulus from week to week, which is understandably disastrous if you're trying to accomplish anything with your physique. All your hard work will be for nothing because it's not really hard work in that golden zone. It's just rebuilding, reworking poundages. That's it. You have to go through all those steps before you get to the meat of it. Now, the other consequence is you'll never really learn how to work hard. And that's the bigger consequence. And for some of you, this will be a lifetime. I know that because I've made the mistake. I've lost months doing that. I get to the golden zone and I think, okay, I've stalled. I need to recycle poundages. I need to recycle the routine. I need to choose a different rep scheme. And I switch things around. I make more rapid progress. And then I stall again, switch things. And I never progress. And my physique never changes. I never actually get stronger. And just like this kid, 6 months down the line, nothing happens. In fact, he's regressed. So that golden zone, when your gains slow down to the point where you're increasing perhaps 2 or 3 reps at a time or £5 a month, that's where you have to live. That's what real progress is. Real progress is a few reps at a time, maybe a few pounds every month or so, every few weeks. That's what real progress is. If you think real progression is 10 kilos at a time, 5 kilos at a time, odds are you are not working hard enough. In fact, it's analogous to fat loss. Now, this happens with everyone, but it happens particularly with guys and girls who struggle with weight loss. Let's say somebody who's like really overweight. They go on a crash diet, lose 20 pounds. They just think that's normal. £4 a week, £5 a week, for them, that's normal weight loss. Now, when they get to the meat of the diet, when they actually start to get 2 or 3 weeks down the road and they've been consistent, their losses slow down to maybe 1 or 2 pounds. And they think, I've stalled. And then they binge. And then they get back on the diet afterwards and they lose another 20 pounds, the same 20 pounds, but it's the same thing. In both cases, you're not actually making progress. You're just moving directions. You're not making progress. You're not in that golden zone of strength or of actual fat loss. In the strength example, you're just getting used to the exercise. You're getting used to the rep scheme. You're getting used to the angles. In terms of weight loss, you're just moving around glycogen and water. That's it. You have to dig in and stick to it for a while to actually see some results. So there are 2 major consequences of not doing that when it comes to training. 1, you never really deliver a good stimulus, so your body's never going to change. And 2, you don't know how to work hard because you never really dig in. And that'll just be your new normal. That's a pretty major thing because I guarantee for every one of you who's not making progression, like real solid progression in terms of their physique, right? I guarantee you it's something like that. It's a blind spot in your head. You think you're working hard, but actually you're not because you make too many changes. So that's the lesson for today. Like, you have to get comfortable there. That is where true progression is. And that is why I don't change routines for a year, 2 years. And if you're the kind of guy who needs to change, you have to wonder why that is. What are you getting from that? If you like the quick progression, understand that's not progress. It's false. It's an illusion. It's a mirage. You're fooling yourself. And as a result, you're only ever going to accumulate body fat. Honestly, some of the simplest coaching cases I have is just getting people sometimes just stick on the same routine. And they gain seemingly magical amounts of strength 6 months down the line. Yeah, I'm a good coach, but I'm not a magician. A lot of times it's just getting people to stick to a goddamn routine for longer than a few months. And that's it. And that's all they ever needed. But if that's what they need, then that's the missing link. Anyway, that video I hope is useful. It's a response to a conversation I had with a client last week. And I think it's a lesson which is worth reminding you guys of every now and again, because I think it's a super important one. Please let me know your own experience of what I've been talking about. I'm sure you guys have experienced the same thing. Oh, before I finish, actually, going back to Westside. Yeah, so in terms of how Westside has progressed over the years, I think it's a lot more normal to stick to an exercise for 3 to 6 to maybe more weeks before you switch it. Or even the way that I've done Conjugate in the past is to actually do more of a linear progression on the main lifts and then do more Conjugate on the assistance lift. I think that's fine, because at least there's some continuity. That was really the main change of how I ran and how I coached Conjugate. I had a lot more continuities. You got to that golden zone and you improved. You actually saw tangible improvements. So anyway, but Westside has evolved, and Louis, may he rest in peace. Okay. All right. Take care.